Most students think they need a 4.0 or a fancy internship to stand out, but the truth is, recruiters don't hire paper, they hire people. When I was recruiting my senior year, I had just gotten off a fresh internship at JP Morgan Wealth Management, so I had that plastered at the top of my resume. My GPA was relatively solid, it was like a 3.8, and so I thought that having these two staples on my resume would get me interviews left and right. Who wouldn't want to hire a kid from JP Morgan? But the harsh reality was, even with a solid GPA and a big name firm on my resume, I still struggled to get interviews. I cold applied to a dozen or so roles, maybe heard back from a couple with higher views and straight up rejected or ghosted from the others. And it wasn't until I started incorporating networking into my job search approach that I actually started seeing results. If you're realizing a strong GPA isn't the golden ticket, but not sure what to do instead, I put together a set of cold outreach scripts that got real recruiters to respond when I had no connections. Totally free, check it out in the first link in the description below. For me, it was a time of desperation. I was scrambling to try to find an offer and lock something down before I graduated. I was constantly scrolling on LinkedIn to try to find new opportunities, sending in easy applies left and right, and always kept in tune to the ongoing events on campus to try to get in front of people. There was this one time where I was focused on staying on the wealth management side of finance and remember seeing a guest speaker from Fidelity coming in to speak at one of the student organizations that I just followed on LinkedIn. I wasn't even an active member in the club. I just knew some people part of it and decided to show up at 7:30 on a Tuesday night. I remember showing up well-dressed with a couple copies of my resume, stayed engaged throughout the entire presentation and panel, asked some questions, and even went up to the presenters afterwards to introduce myself personally after everybody else left. I was able to shake hands with, introduce myself, and make a good first impression with actual employees at Fidelity so that when I eventually ended up sending in any applications for an open spot, they remembered my name and my personal brand. Unfortunately, they weren't actively hiring for an immediate role, but I gave them copies of my resume anyways and connected with them on LinkedIn, thanking them for their time to speak to the student organization and meeting with me personally. I didn't give it much thought after that, honestly. I just continued to network and try to talk to more people in the space at different companies until one day when I'm working a shift at my part-time job, I get an email in my inbox from the Fidelity rep that I spoke to a couple weeks ago. They were referring me to a role that actually just opened up and wasn't even posted yet on their website. It was because when I introduced myself a couple weeks prior, I made a strong first impression by making sure to mention my JP Morgan Wealth Management internship and also my involvement in the student-led investment fund. And so all of these different things, having a strong resume, having a firm handshake, making good eye contact, having good body language, being well-dressed, all of these things I like to believe made me memorable so that when they had an actual opening, I was the first person that they thought of. And not only that, this Fidelity connection who sent me over the application also flagged my resume for HR so I could bypass the silly screening games and also referred me to another employee and introduced me to them to have a further conversation to learn more about the role. This is why it's so important to get your name out there and start having conversations with real people who have influence. If you're just sending your cold applications out into the void, you never know who's even gonna get to see that. You might be applying to a ghost job where people are just scraping and selling your information for one, but for two, real people at the end of the day are making the decisions of who is going to be hired or offered the role. So it makes sense in my mind to cut through the AI BS and get in front of real decision makers who are going to be actual people. And the final thing I'll say about this is to start early and often. You don't want to end up like me, scrambling to make connections to try to pull something together before graduation. Especially if you're still an underclassman searching for internships, this is the best possible time to get your name out there, start making connections, building a network that will serve you for the future. Who knows, maybe in a couple days, weeks, or months timeline, somebody could randomly drop the opportunity of a lifetime in your inbox, and you didn't even have to ask. If you want to stop getting ignored and start having real conversations with people in the industry, I break down the exact strategy I used and still teach today in this next video here. It's all about how to message professionals so they actually respond. Let's cook. I'll see you over there.